Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning, and you're looking live at a PodUp edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to carry. Got a good show lined up today. We'll have our college football analyst, Brent Beaird, and then we're going to have John Clay from the Lexington Herald Leader. Talk a little Kentucky Wildcats today. Gators fly to Kentucky tomorrow. Get ready for a big SEC showdown. Not a whole lot going on in the sports world. However, the Ryder Cup starts sometime today. It may have already started. Let's go to the Titan hotline, and we're joined by our Heisman Trophy winner. No, my bad. Our voter, Brent Beaird. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing fine. A little overcast over here. We're looking for maybe some rain later on, but we got a bunch of conference games that are going on this weekend, and it is unbelievably the last weekend coming up of September. I don't want to, and we're at least a quarter of the way through. I don't, and I'll say that quietly because I don't want to believe it.
And I tell you, I say it every year. You wait months and months and months for football, and before you know it, it's over with. High school football is already halfway done. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of Facebook Lives before we jump into it from Reggie. He says UF falls to the Aggies last night in 5 sets. I watched some of that. He says the passing was atrocious. They didn't play great. And yes, Kingsley and Trey are on the starting roster. Let's go. So I'm a little surprised there, but it's good news for sure. Real quick, Andy, Brent, well, Brent, I get ready to read these things and then somebody sends another message and it goes away. Before we jump into it, he's got a question brought to you by Mellon. Who do you think will be the Semi's biggest threat to achieving an undefeated season, the Gators, Canes, or Duke?
Well, I don't think it'll be Duke. I mean, I appreciate Duke greatly, and game day is there this weekend, which is monumental for them for the Notre Dame game. I guess I would almost say Florida because I think their defense is that good right now and going to be that good. But we still don't quite know. I mean, Miami is playing well. That they deserve a lot of credit. They haven't really played a whole lot of great teams. I mean, they played A&M. Which has helped them, but they're running the ball well with Henry Parrish and Mark Fletcher and Don Chaney. Tyler Van Dyke's playing well right now too. They're developing some of these receivers like Xavier Restapro that do have some injuries. That they are off this week, and so is FSU.
Where do they play this year? In Tallahassee?
Yep, they do. Yes,
yeah.
And look, that could be a humongous game because they. There's a possibility they both could be undefeated going into that game.
Yeah. The semis will have some trouble here. I still don't think they're that great of a team. They're fortunate that they beat Clemson. They had a lot of stuff go their way at the end. Give them credit, though. Dan says volleyball starting over because of Stuckey's injury. That is correct. It's basically Stuckey was the All-American setter who blew her ACL out against Wisconsin. Basically, that's like losing your quarterback.
Yeah.
So they have to rally around, get things together. They'll be fine come postseason, but losing her definitely hurt. All right, Brent, we got some games tonight. I know Coach Spurrier is going to be at the Temple Tulsa game. He flew out there yesterday because Bub's the OC out there. He'll be at that one. But I think Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky would be an interesting game.
I think it would be. It's on CBS Sports Network. not CBS, but the Sports Network. And you've got Jacksonville State with Rich Rod and Sam Houston. Now, these aren't great games, but look, when you haven't seen much in college football since Saturday, that makes a difference. Now, you've got Louisville and North Carolina State on tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
Utah plays tomorrow night at Oregon State. That's a nice game.
Yes.
Frankly, Louisiana Tech at UTEP, which is, again, CBS Sports Network. And you've got Cincinnati at BYU, which is an interesting game, too. So, better games, obviously, on Friday night. But yes, middle and western Kentucky. Look, people just need to enjoy these games. They may not know a lot of the players, and some of these records may not be that good, but it's still football. And I guarantee you, about in the middle of August, guys would pay to see Middle Tennessee at Western Kentucky, wouldn't they, Shane?
Absolutely. Is Sam Houston, are they still FCS or have they moved up to FBS?
I still think they're in the lower division.
I thought so too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll double check that, but I believe they are.
Well, if you want to see good offensive play calling, tune in to the Louisville Cardinals. Because my man Jeff Brom can dial them up. He's one of the best. I love watching his offense. They're undefeated right now, by the way. So check them out. Let's get to a couple of texts here on the Titan More text line that came through early this morning or yesterday. This is from Greg in Fort Myers. It says, Graham is being real nice. Marshall will struggle this year. I guess he was talking about yesterday, Graham Hall. I don't think Marshall struggled at all. I think Jason Marshall Jr. is one of the top corners in America, and will be he's the next in line to be drafted very high. I have a great headline idea for an article highlighting two of the offensive defensive leaders, royalty leaders on both lines, Princely on defense and Kingsley on offense. That's pretty funny.
It is.
This is from Andy on the Titan More text line. He says, wouldn't that 4th and 1 late in the fourth quarter be perfect spot for a jumbo package? The game had been won. You're playing Charlotte. The prior QB sneak on 3rd and 1 was weak, and your fans would love the creativity. Yeah, it's possible, but Billy addressed that, and his analytics notebook or whatever they use said kick it. All right, last one, and then we'll move on. Dave from Macon, Georgia. Love your show. To me, this game is about Florida imposing their will over a team they should beat every time they line up. At some point, the Gators have to demonstrate under Napier consistency in their execution on both sides of the ball against SEC opponents. This translates to W's. They showed positive signs 2 weeks ago against the Vols. Their second test is just more than 48 hours away against a confident Kentucky team on the turf in the Bluegrass. Yeah, it's a huge game. It is a huge game for sure. No doubt about it. All right, Brent, before we jump into the league, there's some pretty good games around the country outside the SEC this week.
Yeah, last week was so good that people forget that we've got some good ones going on too. Kansas, Texas, LSU at Ole Miss, Notre Dame at Duke, as we mentioned, Florida, Kentucky, Georgia, Auburn, USC at Colorado, Arkansas A&M, Utah at Oregon State, and then we mentioned a couple of the Friday games that are going on too. South Carolina at Tennessee, Washington at Arizona, Louisville at NC State, Clemson at Syracuse. Both those teams really need to win. We mentioned the Cincinnati BYU game. Boise State at Memphis. Memphis is a pretty good team. Frankly, that was a big win for Missouri over them too. So, and by the way, in case we don't get to this, I wanted to mention it. In the ACC, and folks may have missed this, and they deserve a lot of credit for this at this point. The ACC is only conference with 6 undefeated teams. The last time that happened through 4 weeks was the SEC in 2012. Now, look, they're not going to end up with 6 undefeated teams, obviously, but for that conference, and they need a big year, that is really helping them right now.
Greg says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law, SI article said the Gators are on schedule to burn the red shirt on 12 to 14 freshmen. Yeah, that's right. Red shirting in today's game, you play them even if it's 1 or 2 games because these kids planning to leave early or transfer or whatever. Very young football team. YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. 31M Burr says, Shane and Brent, CFB graphs on Twitter using analytics gives UF a 27.36% chance of beating Kentucky. What would be a more accurate number? When it comes to analytics, it's over my head. I've watched tape on Kentucky. I usually don't watch tape unless it's an SEC opponent. I watched tape on Tennessee, and I think I told y'all on this show that Florida was the better football team in my eyes. I think Florida's clearly the better team in this matchup. That doesn't mean you're going to win it. I do know that it's gone from a 3-point game down to 1. So that means people, I guess, in Vegas are betting on the Gators. If we do not turn the football over, I think Florida wins this game. I think we're better than they are. Mm-hmm. They have not been tested either. We've played 2 pretty good teams in Tennessee and the Utah Utes. So Greg says, ESPN says it's a 48% chance the Gators can win. So I guess it depends on what chart you're looking at.
Yeah, it really does. Yes. And by the way, I want to mention about the freshman situation again. Just as a reminder for our listeners, I mean, if you're a freshman, you remember you can play 4 games and not lose your red shirt. So I think a lot of coaches are doing that. Now, the reality, too, is, and I'll be brief about this, the coaches sometimes are reluctant to play some freshmen because they know that that someone's going to come after them, and they won't ever admit this, but they're afraid if they play them too much, and they're one of these tweener guys that has a lot of potential, someone may come and poach them in the transfer portal. So don't think that's not going on and going through their mind too.
Yeah, Dan says on Facebook Live, an SEC Network guy was looking forward to the undefeated game between Kentucky and Georgia next week. Hopefully the Florida team watched that too. Hey, look, them SEC Network people thought Tennessee was going to roll us in the swamp.
Yeah.
Those SEC Network people thought Graham Mertz stunk. So just because they're working at the SEC Network don't mean they know a whole lot. Natasha on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. I am late, but Trey's back at the top of the depth chart. Is this because we need him? Well, you want to play your best players. They're not going to put him out there if he's not cleared by the doctors. That's a fact. This is not Billy Napier or Billy Gonzalez begging a trainer to let him play. If he has not cleared all the protocol, they would not put him in that situation. But yes, it'd be great to have number 3 running around for sure. Brent, Alabama they're traveling to Stark Vegas, coming off a big win. Mississippi State put up a bunch of yards last week. What you see happening in this game?
Well, this is the 9:00 game, so folks may need a nap before this happens. Alabama usually has a 9:00 game at some point. By the way, remind me, Shane, we've also got some numbers on the teams that had the most 12:00 kickoffs that we'll mention in a few minutes. But Bama did find themselves in the second half last week after a very lackluster first half. Dallas Turner really played well. The edge linebacker, 4.5 sacks in the last 2 games. So he's also nursing a bit of he is well in doing good as some of the others that are out right now. But I think 2 things happened in this game. One is in the second half, Jalen Milroe found himself to a degree. He has got a decent long, as far as throwing the ball long. He does a pretty good job with that. the struggle that he's got, and he threw an awful pick in the end zone that he had no business throwing. So, and the guy I was thinking about a minute ago was Deontay Lawson. He may not play. Terrence Ferguson may not play. The linebacker and offensive lineman. They didn't practice on Wednesday, and if you don't practice Wednesday, you really don't get to play much. At one point, Milroe was 10 of 12, and they found Jalen Hale, Hale. He as a wide receiver. He's done a nice job. Alabama was sacked 0 times in the second half, so that made a difference. Will Rogers played better last week, 30 of 48 for 487. That's a season high. Remember, they've gone from the Mike Leach air raid to more of a getting Will Rogers behind center. State struggling in some ways too. Spencer Rattler threw for over 330 yards against them and had a great game. So, I mean, I think Bama probably wins, but as you know, Shane, you get Cowboys, you get late night, you get a lot of noise, and anything can happen. But Bama favored in the game before they also have an away game next week against Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think Bama's going to roll in this game. Radware is a family-owned business that prides itself in excellent customer service while providing quality and affordable promotional products and customized apparel. Speaking with Brent Beaird on the Titan Moore Hotline, Kenny asks on Facebook Live, or am I golfing in Lexington? No. Road trips, fly in, go to the hotel, spend the night, fly back. No time for golf.
Yep.
That Utah trip was special because it was a Thursday night long weekend, things of that nature. Brent, in Jerry's world, Arkansas A&M. A&M's without their starting quarterback. Arkansas, I don't know if Rocket Sanders playing. What can you tell us about this game?
There's still a lot of unknowns about this game as far as particularly Rocket Sanders. I mean, he basically hasn't played this year, and we really don't know what's going on with this. Hopefully he'll be back. That's arguably their best player, one of the best running backs in the league. That's going to be crucial to get him back. Connor Weigman, we just found out yesterday, is out for the year. I don't mean for a couple of games. He's out for the year with a broken foot. And that is obviously very disappointing. Max Johnson came in and played well. Shane and I have been talking for a while that Max Johnson is a capable backup, and now he's going to have to be a capable starter, frankly. But this is a big game. It's a very emotional game. Arkansas really had a shot. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that much, Shane, but they had a real shot to beat LSU last weekend. KJ Jefferson played out of his mind and had a tremendous ball game, was throwing the ball very well, and they just basically ran out of time. Again, Arkansas needs this game. Well, they both do, but particularly to get the heat off of Sam Pittman. I don't think Pittman will be fired, but they've started slow, not the start they thought they would be. So this is a big game for both teams.
The oldest rivalry in the SEC, the Dogs are traveling to the Plains, take on the Auburn Tigers. Listen to this stat. I don't know if you saw this, Brent, but I had to screenshot it. Auburn has thrown for fewer than 100 yards in 5 straight Power 5 games dating back to last year. Last year, they threw for 75 yards against Mississippi State, 60 against A&M, 77 against Bama. This year, they threw for 94 yards against Cal and 56 against A&M. They are 43 for 98, which is 43% in passing in those games. They're going to get blasted. They are so bad on offense, Brent. I think Georgia hammers them.
Yeah, and Georgia usually starts slow, so Auburn may be in the game a little bit. Now, you got to, when you're playing at Auburn, you've always got to watch for Auburn voodoo, is what the beat writers call it. What we mean by that is for whatever reason, and they actually had one of these things in the A&M game. Auburn often has a play or two that goes for them that is this unrealistic when the ball pops up in the air and they catch it and run for a touchdown type thing. They've done that against Georgia, and they did that against A&M last week. One of their better defensive players did. But the problem at Auburn, obviously, is the quarterbacks. They've got 3 quarterbacks, and none of them are very good. Let's be honest about that. Their strength right now is their defense. The defense is playing pretty well. Running game is doing okay. But they did lose one of their better running backs, Damari Austin, for several games. That's disappointing for Auburn, too. But at the same time, Georgia is obviously still undefeated, and they're playing well. And Georgia's like 16-3 in this series in the last 19 games. That's what a Georgia beat writer told me. So Georgia's still having some trouble on the offensive line. Ladd McConkey, who has not played this year, is supposed to play in this game. The Georgia wide receiver that's very valuable to them. Now, and real quick, Carson Beck has 1,184 yards in 4 games. That is the third most since 2000. He is behind only Stetson Bennett and Aaron Murray. Now, look, he's not perfect, and I'm curious if you've seen much of him at this point, Shane, but he's doing okay, learning the offense as a starter, which takes you some time. So the numbers back up the point that he's been pretty solid.
Yes, for sure. Kentucky Gators, huge game. What can you tell us of your thoughts on this game?
Well, look, the Kentucky is really made some improvements with Mark Stoops. The incredible number on here is Mark Stoops has won in this series 2 years in a row. If he wins 3 years in a row, that's the first time that's happened against Florida since Bear Bryant back in 1949 through 51, which is something to think about. But Kentucky still, Leary has been okay. I'm curious what you've seen on him on film. He's only completing about 59% of his passes, so that has been an issue. Ray Davis, their running back's a real deal, who came over from Vanderbilt. This Brown kid, Barbarian Brown, is really good on kickoffs. I've got to be careful about that, Shane, because he can take it the distance very quickly. I mean, I'm with you. I think Florida is frankly the better team here, but with the game on the road and Mark Stoops, this is one of those 50-50 games that we talked about at the beginning of the year that Florida really needs to win. So incredibly important. Maxwell Hairston is one of the better Kentucky defensive backs and one of the better ones in the league, frankly. So I do think Florida will win, but it is an even game because Kentucky's a solid club.
Yep. The Bayou Bengals travel to the Grove. Ole Miss coming off their loss at Bama. A lot of the Ole Miss people are not very happy at how things are going. I just don't see how they can beat LSU. I could be wrong, but I think LSU wins this game handily.
Yeah, LSU just has better players, frankly. And if people haven't heard this, Michael Trigg is gone at Ole Miss. He transferred from USC. They thought he would really be good. It just has not worked out. Frankly, Lane Kiffin's now 0-4 against Nick Saban. Jackson Dart struggled because of the Alabama defense. Dart, I still think, is very good quarterback most of the time. What usually happens with Ole Miss is after they lose to Alabama, they lose the following week. So you almost get beat twice, and they've got to get over that. LSU, I'm with you, is the better team, but LSU struggling defensively on rush defense. They're 12th in the league. In pass defense, they're really yo-yoing this thing up 1 week, down the next. This is a big rivalry as it goes along, but frankly, right now, LSU just has the better players.
Yeah. Very entertaining game. I think it's going to be in Knoxville, South Carolina, with the passing attack that they have behind Spencer Rattler and the way Tennessee plays offense. Should be a shootout. What do you see happening in this game?
Just what you said. I think that's going to be true. Tennessee leads the SEC in sacks with 16, and South Carolina is the last in the SEC in sacks allowed. So that is interesting. Spencer Rattler is playing out of his mind. He deserves a lot of credit. I mean, at one point in last week's game, he was like 13 of 13. He was 18 of 20 for 288. Lord, and 3 touchdowns. So he has been very good. Frankly, Jalen Kilgore, their safety has played real well too. The offensive line of South Carolina is getting better. South Carolina blitzed Tennessee last year too. Tennessee against UTSA had 4 touchdown drives that averaged a minute and 17 seconds. I'll give Chris Doring credit for that too. And I'm guessing, Shane, his shirt was too small when he said it. But Milton at one point, and look, Shane has been dead on with Milton the whole year. I mean, he ended up doing okay, but Milton at one point, Shane, was 1 of 10. It had one of those 1 of 10 stretches. So he can be very good and very bad in the same game, right?
Yep. Like I said, he's going to get somebody fired real quick in the National Football League. Brent, before we get you out of here, the biggest game I think in the ACC this week is obviously Notre Dame traveling to Duke.
Yeah.
I got to think that ticket price is just outrageous. Coach Spurrier on our podcast the other day, he picked Duke to win. He thinks Duke can match up with them. Plus, Notre Dame coming off that heartbreaking loss. You think there's any way the Duke Blue Devils pull it off?
Oh, it's possible, sure, especially with their quarterback, Riley Leonard, who has played really well also. And look, you've got two. That's one of the better quarterback games of the whole day. Yeah. Obviously, with Sam Hartman in there too. Notre Dame had a very disappointing loss, obviously, and could have won the game with Ohio State. And what I also want to mention real quick, Shane, and I don't know if it'll be that good of a game, but boy, Missouri is playing well in this point too. They've got Vanderbilt and Brady Cook, who they booed at home the other day, is playing good. Luther Burden, frankly, is one of the better players in the SEC that probably nobody has seen. So if you get a chance to watch him, that would be really good. And I know you're going to ask me about a nugget. I want to throw this in here real quick. I know this probably won't surprise you at all, but Michael Casagrande, who writes for AL.com, did a very interesting article this week on who's played the most 12 o'clock Eastern Time kickoffs in the last 11 years. Georgia was one with 39, and Florida was second with 38. Does that surprise you at all?
That is surprising. I know LSU ain't on that list.
LSU is last with 11.
Yeah, some reason the league and the television networks they're okay with them playing their night games to let them all get liquored up.
By the way, the College Football Playoff Committee has met this week. They didn't take any action, but what they're trying to figure out is, and they're really kind of waiting on see totally about where all the Pac-12 schools go before making a decision on this, and do they go with a 6-6 formula or a 5-7? They're not real sure about that. 5 meaning the 5 power conferences and 7 at large. So that is yet to be decided. So just wanted to throw that in there too.
All right, Brent. Great stuff as always, my man. Have a great weekend watching games. We'll talk to you next week.
And you'll enjoy John Clay, who has been covering Kentucky for probably 3 or 4 decades. One of the real go guys to go to when you want to know about Kentucky.
Yep, we're going to be joining with him here in just a second. We'll talk to you soon, Brent.
Thank you, bud. Take care.
That's Brent Beaird joining us on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. Jimmy asked Shane, do you know the status of our starting center? He's back. We're going to Lexington in full strength. Trey Wilson is suiting up as well. Real quick, this is Alan in Atlanta on the Titan Tomorrow text line. Shane, you mentioned 4 or 5 plays you'd love to install. What about a new segment on your show? Draw it up on the whiteboard and then cut to a highlight of successful execution on the play in a game. Niners chalkboard. I like that. Got to figure out how to figure that out. We may go to that during the bye week. Let's take a quick timeout. When we come back, we'll be joined by John Clay from the Lexington Herald, talking a little bit about the Kentucky Wildcats. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back. We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Silverback Concrete's a family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. We're going to go back to the Titan MR hotline, and we're going to be joined by John Clay, who's been covering the Kentucky Wildcats for quite some time at the Lexington Herald Leader. Good morning, John. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Shane. How are you?
Good. Big game. Obviously, Kentucky's undefeated. Haven't really played anybody yet. I guess that's what people want to say. But we know that it's Stoops has done a tremendous job with this program. I want to talk to you about him briefly. What's it like to cover him? You know, you've been covering coaches for a long time. Some guys have a good relationship with their media boys. Some don't. I met him a couple of years ago over at the beach when all the Stoops boys were over there with Coach Spurrier. Seems like just a good old dude.
Oh, he's a football coach, Shane. I mean, that's what I mean. There's a kind of a contrast here between basketball and football with John Calipari. I mean, Calipari obviously is a very successful basketball coach, but Cal's into all kinds of different things. Cal was a marketing major in college. He's always coming up with sayings and trying to find new ways of doing things. Mark's just a football coach. I mean, he's pretty focused in on football. recruiting the best players he could find and developing those players. And I mean, he's good with the media. He's not going to BS us. The one thing he doesn't like to do. He doesn't like to tell us if anybody's hurt. He's more like Bill Belichick. I mean, if we know somebody's hurt, we can ask him. He's not going to deny it, but he's not going to volunteer that information. But no, I've enjoyed covering Mark because I think he's just a good, solid, genuine guy. And what he wants to do is coach football.
And there'll be a statue of him when it's all said and done. What he's done with that football program.
He's the winningest coach in the Kentucky football history, and as you well know, it's not a history filled with glory, but still, he has the most wins. And I mean, his success against Florida, I mean, shows one thing. I mean, 31 game losing streak to Florida. Now the past 5 years, it's 3-2. They're trying to win their third straight over Florida. And as someone who was there for those 73-7 and 65-0 when Florida wins over Kentucky, I'm not sure I thought I'd ever see a day where Kentucky would have a chance to win 3 straight over Florida.
Yeah, it's nuts. Chris has a question for you here on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law. Doesn't Stoops have his own brand of bourbon?
He does. I think that's one reason why he said the other night that he would. Yeah, bourbon is okay. Yeah, he does have his own brand of bourbon.
Very cool. Then Andy has a question on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law. John, how disappointed? Oh, hang on, it went away. Here it comes. How disappointed are the Kentucky fans at the games at noon? And what's the early opinion on Devin Leary?
First of all, they're very disappointed that the game is noon. The last few games between Kentucky and Florida and here in Lexington have been at night. And night games have been great atmosphere. In fact, I think the crowd was one of the reasons they were able to win a couple of years ago up here over Florida. I think Florida had something like 7 or 8 pre-snap penalties in that game. The crowd was so loud because Kentucky had not beaten Florida at home since 1986. So that was a big win. So, and obviously tailgating. You know, Mark said earlier in the week when somebody asked him about the noon crowd, he said he had faith that Kentuckians could get up early and pound beers leading up to the noon kickoff. Then, yeah, he said at night that he would bourbon was okay too. He wanted to make sure people knew bourbon was okay. So no, they're not happy about it, but there's nothing you can do about it. This day and age of television sets everything. So it is what it is. It's a noon start. The early read on Devin Leary, he's been up and down. He's been a little disappointing from the standpoint that he had the reputation of being a very accurate quarterback, and his completion percentage is below 60%. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. He's in a new system with Liam Cohen. We tend to forget he had surgery on his torn pectoral muscle really less than a year ago. It was a fairly complicated surgery, and he's thrown to a new group of receivers that he's not used to. So I think he'll get better as the year has gone along. And he's been really hard on himself. We talked to him after the Vanderbilt game when he threw 2 interceptions, and he said up front, I got to play better. I'm not playing very well right now. I got to play better. I got to operate better. Our offense has to be more consistent, and that starts with me. So he's been his own self-critic so far.
Yeah, when I watched Kentucky last year, even though they won in the swamp, I was like, this is one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen in the Southeastern Conference. And, before last year, they kind of prided themselves on having great offensive line play and running the football. Have they improved in that area, John?
They've improved, but not as much as they were hoping to improve. They've already made some moves on the offensive line. They moved Jagger Burton, who was a starting offensive guard, to center during the spring and in camp leading up to the opener. But then last week they went back at Vanderbilt. They went back to moving Eli Cox, who was the center last year, who played guard. They moved him back to center, moved Jagger back to guard. They're missing Kenneth Horsey, who is their most experienced player at offensive guard. He's missed the last couple of games. Not sure if he's going to be able to make it back. My guess is he's not going to be back Saturday against Florida. Dylan Ray, a transfer from West Virginia, has been filling in there. Marcus Cox has been solid at left tackle. He's a transfer from Northern Illinois. And Jeremy Flax, I feel like, has improved at right tackle. Cortland Ford, a transfer from Southern Cal, backs him up there. They've been improved, but not as much improvement. Shane, they've had terrible problems on first down. Their first down efficiency has been really bad. A lot of 0, -1, 1 or 2 yard gains put them in second and long situations. In fact, when we were talking with Liam Cohen after the Vanderbilt game, Liam said, look, if we're not going to be able to run the ball on first down, I got to throw it. I got to throw the ball on first down. I'm really throwing the ball more than I want to on first down. But if we can't run it, we can't continue to get in second and long situations. And I think a lot of that goes back to the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy as well. You're just beating your head against the wall if you can't run the ball and gain positive plays on first down. There's no reason to call a run. Let's talk a little bit about Ray Davis. Comes over from Vanderbilt. Were you surprised that I don't know if they went after him when he was in the portal or if he contacted Kentucky? He was a good player at Vanderbilt, but what has he done for this Kentucky offense?
Yeah, he's a guy who ran for 126 yards against Kentucky last year when Vandy beat Kentucky in Lexington. So they obviously knew about him. Not sure exactly who contacted who when he went into the portal, but they were looking for somebody from the portal because they lost Chris Rodriguez now with Washington in the NFL. Davis has been great. He's a really mature kid. One of the things that it really shouldn't have been a surprise because he got the ball out of the backfield at Vanderbilt, but there wasn't a lot of talk about that. He's done a good job of catching the ball out of the backfield. He's given him some explosive runs against Akron. He had a 58-yard touchdown off of a little safety valve pass where he turned that into a score, and he also had a 55-yard run for a touchdown. So yeah, they've been very happy with Ray Davis up to this point. But going back to, he's been one of those guys who, for whatever reason, on first down hasn't been able to get that 4 or 5 yards that you want on first down, and he's talked about that as well. But they've been very happy with Ray Davis to this point.
All right, let's switch over to the defense. I mean, ever since Mark Stoops has taken over there, they've been solid on that side of the ball. They always have really good outside linebacker play that gave us fits last year. What have you seen from the defense? Obviously, they got 2 pick-sixes against Vanderbilt. I'm not saying that's going to happen. We're hoping that's not going to happen again. But just what have you seen overall from this defense so far?
Two things. They've been good against the run, which I think will set up a really good matchup on Saturday night. The way Florida ran the ball on Tennessee, the way Florida's been able to run the ball. Kentucky's held all four of their opponents. As you mentioned, they've been pretty soft at this point, but they've held them under 100 yards rushing. The other thing is the thing you've mentioned, they've been very opportunistic. They returned a fumble, 69 yards for a touchdown in the opener against Ball State. Maxwell Harrison had the 2 pick-sixes against Vanderbilt. Trevin, you mentioned linebackers. J.J. Weaver's a guy who's played a bunch of games against Florida in the past. They depend on him at outside linebacker, but the real star so far has been Trevin Wallace, the linebacker out of Georgia, who was a backup until this year because they had more experienced guys in front of him. He, going into the last week anyway, he was leading the SEC in sacks with 4. He's been their playmaker on defense. But like you mentioned, ever since Mark has been here, after the first couple of years when he probably started getting his own players in here, they've been really solid, really good on defense. I think an underrated guy in the SEC is Brad White, the defensive coordinator. Has been the defensive coordinator since 2019. I think he's done a great job, but obviously Florida is going to be the biggest test for them that they've had up to this point. And Mark talked a lot on Monday, and Brad White talked a lot about it on yesterday, about the way that Florida wants to play a physical style of football. They want to run the ball on you. They want to be physical, be tough up front. And Brad White said yesterday, I mean, this game's going to be one on the line of scrimmage on both sides, and they've got to be ready for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Andy's question was that Kentucky hasn't given up 100 yards rushing this year. Can they shut down Etienne and Montreal Johnson, our 2 stud running backs? When you look at the 4 teams that Kentucky has played thus far, obviously only one I think was the Power 5 Power 5 was Vanderbilt. But have teams tried to run the ball, or they knew that they weren't going to be able to have success that they got away from? Is that the reason why they haven't rushed for 100? Or just how do you see this playing out when Florida tries to run the football?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I'm not sure that all of them have really tried to run the ball that much. When they played Eastern Kentucky, which, is an FCS team down the road, they have a really good quarterback in Parker McKinney. So they threw the ball quite a bit, relying on him. That was a different game because Walt Wells, their coach, was on the Kentucky staff. They have 2 assistants who are former UK players. They know a lot about Kentucky. That was a closer game than anybody expected, but maybe we should have been expecting it to be close considering that. Vanderbilt ended up getting behind last week, so they were down 24-0 really before what few fans who were there at Vanderbilt Stadium were in their seats. So they had to throw the ball trying to come back. I think Florida will definitely be the first team they played that's come in and say, hey, we're going to run the ball on you. We've got 2 good backs. We've got a good scheme. We got a quarterback. That was another thing too, Shane. Graham Mertz, Kentucky, he visited Kentucky when he was in the transfer portal. Kentucky ended up going with whether Kentucky went with Devin Leary or Graham Mertz went with Florida. I don't know, exactly who telling the truth there, what exactly happened. But Stoops and Brad White have talked about how they've really been impressed with the way Graham has played within himself and taking care of the ball. And he doesn't make mistakes. So they know. I think it's definitely going to play out a little differently than what Kentucky's seen to this point. That Florida is going to try and run the ball. We're going to be physical with you, and we are going to try and run the ball, and that's going to be a challenge. We'll see how Kentucky, stands up to that challenge.
So the third phase of the game, special teams. Florida has struggled in areas in their 4 games. I think they found their field goal kicker. But if it comes down to a type of game that it possibly could, because Kentucky tries to muddy up these games, make them ugly, do y'all have a good field goal kicker?
Yeah, they got Alex Rayner, a transfer from Georgia Southern, who came in. He's he's only tried 4 field goals, but he's made all 4. I think they're pretty confident in him. Kentucky's return game has been good because of Barrion Brown. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown against Ball State. He had a big punt return in a game that helped turn a game earlier this year as well. Now, they got a punt blocked earlier in the year, so their punt protection is a little sketchy. But overall, I think that was an emphasis for Mark over the offseason. They wanted to get better in special teams. He changed special team coaching around, brought in a guy, and Jay Boulware, who had been at Oklahoma to running backs and special teams. And I think overall they've been improved. But like I said, they got a punt blocked earlier this year, so I wouldn't say it's 100% over that. But they're back to the field goal kicker. They feel confident in their field goal kicker and Alex Rayner. Yes.
The fan base at Kentucky, John, from football standpoint, I mean, yes, they want to win the SEC East. Do they believe they can win the SEC East, or is it a fan base that if we go 8-4, 9-3, go to a good bowl down in the state of Florida, is that what the Kentucky football faithful want year in and year out? I mean, they're pleased with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're pleased with that, but they're fans, Shane. They want to, you start winning 7 and 8 games every year. Fans start saying, why aren't we winning 9 or 10? How come we can't take that next step? How come we can't, Mark hasn't beaten Georgia since he's here. You say to some fans, they lost 31 in a row to Florida, and now they're 3-2 against Florida over the last 5 years. Or, they had a long losing streak against Tennessee. They're more competitive, except for last year's game. They've been more competitive against Tennessee. And you'll hear some in the fan base say, yeah, but, I'd like to go to Atlanta. I'd like to play an SEC championship game. Are we ever going to be able to do that? So overall, I think the more sensible, if there is such a thing, if they're more sensible fans, they really appreciate the job Marks does. But there's always that, why are we doing better? But I think overall, fans are very happy with what Mark has done here. I've said this before. A friend of mine said, I think it's very true. I think you have to be a longtime Kentucky football fan just to appreciate the job that Mark has done from the ground up, the way he has built the program, the facility improvements they've made, the development part of the program. I mean, it's light years above what it was before. Rich Brooks, don't get me wrong, Rich Brooks did a really good job here building a foundation against some very tough circumstances, but he was not able to take it to the next level. But I think Mark has built on that. And if they do take it to the next level, I think Mark's got a chance to do that. But it's tough in this league, as you know, Shane. You got Texas and Oklahoma coming in next year. It's a tough job.
Yeah. And Doring picks y'all every summer to go to the SEC championship game. So the Kentucky fans should be happy with Chris Doring. Last thing before we get you out of here, we have to ask, hoops practice has started. Kentucky, the pressure's on. What can you tell us briefly about? I'm sure they got a million McDonald's All-Americans walking around campus.
Yeah, Cal's kind of gone back to the future. He's gone back. He's got a #1 recruiting class. He's got a bunch of really young players who are good but are really young. They played a series up in Canada in the summer, 4 games where they looked really good. They shared the ball well. The big problem now is their 2 big men are hurt. They're not practicing yet. They're not sure when they're going to get them. And then they have a foreign kid from Croatia that they're trying to get into school, but they haven't been able to get him into school yet. And the clock is ticking. We're coming up here pretty close to the make or break time about whether they're going to be able to get him in school. I can't even pronounce his name. They call him the Big Z around here. So that's really the topic of conversation. Why can't they get him into school? What does the admissions office have against John Calipari? Or why didn't John Calipari and his staff do all their homework and know that they couldn't get this kid into school? That's the big drama going on right now here at UK and in Lexington.
That's crazy. Oscar Shibwe, he's gone, right?
He's gone. He's with the He didn't get drafted, but he's a free agent with the Pacers. That's right. He's gone.
Okay. Well, John, we appreciate your time. Let everybody know if they want to check out your work up there in Lexington, how they can follow you on Twitter and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks. You can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it this week at John Clay IV. You can check out all our work online at Kentucky.com or KentuckySports.com.
Good stuff. Appreciate your time, John. We'll see you in the press box Saturday afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Shane. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, that's John Clay talking about the Kentucky Wildcats. Appreciate him joining us on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. We're going to get to some few things here before we wrap it up. This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. This Day in Sports in 1919, the fastest Major League Baseball game was played. The Giants beat the Phillies 6-1 in 51 minutes. Think about that. That's crazy. That's This Day in Sports brought to you by our good friends at Campus USA Credit Union. On YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. Kevin asked, Shane, did you see the allegations coming out about Scott Frost? Late to practice every day, canceling recruiting visits, being drunk, and telling the parents that. I did not see that. Was this I'm assuming these allegations are when he was coaching at Nebraska, or was it at UCL? Then Barone 71 on YouTube says, Shane, do you think there should be more QBs under center plays in football rather than almost in shotgun? Yes, I do. Also seems like these shotgun one running back sets get blown up far more than when teams had fullbacks. It varies, but I do think lining up under center is good. Andy's asked on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon, isn't it a great sign that Trey Wilson's starting? They wouldn't want to risk further injury, would they? No, I said earlier, Andy, it doesn't matter what the player says, begging trainers and doctors, or what a coach says. That trainer and doctor will not sign off on that kid unless they think he's good enough to go play. So now, granted, we may use Trey Wilson as a damn decoy all night, fake reverses, motions, whatever. I don't know, but it is a good sign because he is a dynamic player. I would love to see Andy Jean get a little more action and also get more getting Mizell in there. Let's run it. Let's run it down the throat, fire it over their heads. Andy, oh no, one more here. This was from, where is that? Chris asked, Shane, what do you remember from the 92 Kentucky game? That we jumped out 28-0. That was the game I think I ran a quarterback sneak in, threw a couple, and caught one. Or was that in 90? I can't remember. But anyway, we kind of sputtered around defensively. I think it was Pookie Jones. We couldn't stop him. And they tied it up, and we took the lead, but we had to get a first down. And I remember we called a pass play on 3rd and about 5, and we whiffed up front. And I just had to get rid of it. And I saw Eric Red on the check down. He hadn't even turned around. I threw it. Luckily, he turns around, catches it, gets hit first down, and that iced the game. But we dominated the game early and then kind of sputtered around. Ruse Ogre State Farm offers a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visitogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. Tomorrow's program, we'll have JC. We'll do our Peachland Dental picks. Should be a lot of games to pick from. Looking forward to that. But if you missed it earlier, we are going to Lexington, Kentucky with a full roster ready to roll. Trey Wilson's in the starting lineup. Kingsley Aguaquin is in the starting lineup. Hopefully they can play the whole game, be ready to roll, and we can play turnover-free football and go win a football game and get this season going the way I thought it would. So anyway, hope you enjoyed today's program. Again, I want to thank John Clay from the Lexington Herald Leader for joining us, as well as our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird. Have a great day, folks. Enjoy the games tonight. We got a good one in the NFL. Lions at the Packers. Enjoy it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Take care.